welcome to this bonus episode of Living Wow Out Loud. This initial bonus series is going to be a reading of the book, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me from Surviving to Thriving with Autoimmune Disease. I've chosen to include this as a bonus because it really is the foundation that led to Change Your Story. It then led to the website Rise to Shine, and eventually morphed into Living Wow as we know it today. And so in order for those of you who may not be readers or have chosen the podcast platform, I want you to also have access to the book. And because I have all the rights to all my material, I'm able to upload it here for you as a bonus episode. So I'm going to break it into chapters to make it more digestible. And you will see I will label all of these as bonus episodes, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me from Surviving to Thriving with Autoimmune Diseases, and then the chapter. So enjoy. I hope you get something of value out of these bonus episodes. Introduction. My story. My name is Callie Stone, and at the time of completing this book, I am 48 years old. Side note, at the time of recording this podcast bonus, I am 53 years old. So back to the story. My story, of course, begins at birth. However, the relevant points of this experience, my autoimmune journey, begin at the age 25, just as I completed my Master's of Science degree in speech-language pathology. Shortly after graduation, in what is called the clinical fellow year, I experienced my first symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis, RA. I was diagnosed the following year after moving back to Boise in 1998. My thought was, I'm too young to have arthritis, but rheumatoid arthritis ran in my family, with both my mother and grandmother having RA, so I didn't give it much more thought. At that time, in my scientific education, I had learned about genetics and the fact that you are destined with the genetics from your DNA. In 1999, I began experiencing chronic infections that would not heal, but morph from one thing into another. I would have bronchitis from October through May every year, with a bronchial cough that would linger year-round. Sinus infections would morph into cellulitis and staph infections. Urinary tract infections would be complicated by yeast infections and vacillate back and forth as treatment for one would exacerbate the other. Both my internist and gynecologist were perplexed and prescribing antibiotics, steroids, antifungals, and anti-inflammatories, all of which would only give brief resolution until the bug would morph into another presentation. Finally, my internist determined that I had colonized staph in my sinuses from working in healthcare, by this time in hospitals and skilled nursing facilities for 5 years. When my sinuses would drain, the staph was opportunistic and would take up residence wherever it would find an opportunity. It seemed like a plausible explanation, and we all went with it for years, as I would cycle through what seemed like an endless infection of one sort or another. Finally, in 2011, I had an outbreak of skin lesions. They weren't severe, especially in comparison to the gnarly infections that I was used to. The lesions were relatively small and scattered randomly, or so I thought, on various places in my body. The largest one was on my scalp and was itchy but not painful. It was just an irritation on the crown of my head, so I couldn't really see the little bald spot. Other lesions were more painful, so I had to see the doctor. She discounted it as another strange presentation with no explanation or solution. So I continued to ignore them and went about my life, irritated but not sick. Then I had the most bizarre outbreak in my mouth. At first, I didn't notice anything, but my mouth hurt, like it was on fire with gasoline. It hurt to eat, it hurt to drink, it hurt to talk, and it hurt like nothing else. As I examined my mouth, I am a speech therapist after all, I do know how to do an oral exam, I noticed white horizontal lines in my gums and the inside of my cheeks. My gums were red and inflamed. I had never seen anything like that in a patient's mouth, and my daughter was in college as a dental assistant, so I had her take a peek. "Have you seen anything like this in your books?" "No," she said. So the two of us sat down and started researching on the internet these white lines and inflamed gums and came up with oral lichen planus as the perfect self-diagnosis by Callie and Jessica Stone. The only problem was, for treatment and a real diagnosis, it said you should see your dentist. Absolutely not. My mouth was so sore, there was no way I was stepping foot in a dental office, let alone a dental chair. I kept searching and found that a dermatologist could also diagnose and treat oral lichen planus. That sounded much gentler to me, so I made an appointment feeling quite confident that this was merely a technicality to get my hands on the prescription I needed to relieve the firestorm of pain in my mouth. When I met with the dermatologist and gave her my health history and recent bout of irritating skin lesions, but the only reason I'm here is for you to diagnose this oral lichen planus so I can get relief, she said the craziest thing I'd heard in my entire life. I think you have lupus. What? No, I don't have lupus. I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire adult life. I've lost 70 pounds, I exercise regularly, and have energy that I haven't had since I was 16 years old. I don't even have arthritis pain anymore. I just have oral lichen planus. It's the only thing wrong with me. So she tricked me. She convinced me that it would be prudent to do a biopsy of the lesion on my scalp since it wasn't healing and had been there for about 6 months. As a redhead with freckles and siblings with skin cancer, I agreed that it probably was a good idea to make sure that I didn't have skin cancer on the top of my head. So she popped a biopsy out and sent it off to the lab. She gave me some lip service about the oral lichen planus and a prescription for Miracle mouthwash, which is a pharmacist compound that is used with AIDS patients who get similar painful mouth sores. Yikes. I came to the dermatologist physically feeling better than I had ever felt as an adult, but with one heck of a sore mouth, and left being told I had lupus and was given a prescription for AIDS patients. The dermatologist called me a week later and said, "Your biopsy results came back as unrecognizable, so I'm sending it off to another lab." Okay. I wasn't really sure how I was supposed to respond or what I should have asked, so that was all I could come up with. As I thought about it, I realized, well, at least it's not cancer because that would have been recognizable, right? The Miracle mouthwash was helping a bit because it basically numbed my mouth, but the lines and inflammation weren't calming down. I was just happy to have something that gave me some relief, and on with life I went. When I went in for my follow up appointment with the dermatologist, she shared with me that the lab results had come back from the second lab. They were positive for both systemic lupus erythematosus and oral lichen planus. Both were autoimmune diseases. She then let me know that AI diseases often travel in packs. When you get one, you will often have another. She laid out the treatment options of super antibiotic treatment, chemotherapy drugs, and steroids that may manage the symptoms of the story in more detail in lesson 2. For the sake of continuity in this history, you need to know that fruits and vegetables in a capsule changed my life and became a catalyst on this journey before I even knew I was on the autoimmune highway. What I was experiencing as a miracle of healing in my rheumatoid arthritis became much more than that as I continued to read everything I could get my hands on about nutritional healing and cellular health. I had learned that I was constantly growing all new cells in my body, and I could either make healthy cells or sick cells based on the choices I made about how I fed those cells. When I returned home from the doctor's office, I had confidence that I was already on the road to healing and that it was not new. As I researched lupus and lichen planus, I went through a number of feelings and reactions from fear to realization and even facing mortality. I realized that I did, in fact, have the diseases she had diagnosed, but when I looked back at what I now recognized as the cyclical nature of flare ups in autoimmune, I could trace it all the way back to 1999. I had lived with lupus symptoms undiagnosed for 12 years. Only the lichen planus was new to me. Then I realized that maybe the rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis was incorrect. Maybe it was just the pain of lupus, and I had had it even longer. Further study and living in my body with awareness now helped me to recognize the difference between the arthritis pain and the lupus pain. They are distinct and different. So fast forward to 2017 when I finally complete my story, or at least complete it for now. Maybe it's just a status update with the lessons that the autoimmune diseases have taught me so far. Lessons that I by no means expected to learn and hope to share with others to ease their suffering or possibly offer hope and guidance. Lessons that I wish I would have found on the internet when I was researching lupus, because it was terrifying and not at all hopeful to receive these diagnoses and see the pain and suffering and death in the literature and, quote, support groups, unquote. I have maintained my health and vitality since late 2008 with very few prescription medications and then only for brief periods. I no longer have the chronic infections or debilitating flares that left me in bed recovering for weeks and even months. I have not been cured of rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus, or oral lichen planus, but I do manage them very effectively so that most people have no idea I have any disease, let alone this lovely trio. These are the 8 lessons lupus taught me. They are not the only lessons, but they have been the most surprising and transformational for me. They are the lessons that have helped me reclaim my life and my destiny. You may notice some overlap within the lessons or some circling back. Unfortunately, I can be strong-willed or slow to learn a lesson, and so it will resurface in another way or at another time. Ultimately, the repetition gets through to me and clarity and change finally follow. I hope you enjoy the journey and find hope in healing and transformation. After my personal transformation from surviving to thriving with autoimmune diseases, I was completely astounded that the experience was not what I expected it to be. Instead of resenting my body and being forever trapped with a legacy of bad genes, as I had believed would be my fate, I looked and felt 20 years younger. I had dropped weight that had plagued me for decades, eliminated chronic pain that no doctor, therapy, or medicine could relieve, and found energy that I hadn't had since I was 16 years old. Because this is not what I expected, and because I wish someone would have told me that there is another way than sad, I wrote the book, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me from Surviving to Thriving with Autoimmune Diseases. As I began to share the book and the message of change your story, Living Well was born. After years of continuing to learn and study how and why lifestyle has such an impact on disease and the world being torn apart by a global pandemic, I can't stand by any longer keeping it to myself. You have to understand that the power is in your hands. The power is in your body. The power is in your lifestyle. The Living Wow Center is a holistic wellness practice that utilizes the framework of the Living Wow lifestyle to identify system failures or maintenance needs. Whether you just need a tune-up or a complete systems overhaul, we support you as an individual to get back out on the journey and living wow. We will work with you to determine levels of function, needs, tools, resources, and/or providers that may be best equipped to guide you as you step out of the negative health cycle and turn it into a positive health cycle. The Living Wow Center offers a revolutionary, comprehensive approach to healing, coaching, and support that is necessary in our complex, sad world. Schedule your complimentary consultation today to see how Living Wow can support you. Wow, you just finished another episode of Living Wow Out Loud. I hope you leave today empowered to live your best life and thrive. If you're ready to jump in and learn a little bit more about Living Wow, come check out the Living Wow Center. That's LIVINGWOWCENTER.com. And maybe consider joining our next Living Wow Challenge. We run the 1st to the 10th of every single month. See you soon.